Welcome back, guys. This is going to be the second part of our video tutorial series on Angular component that we are writing a single page application. So if you have been following from the first part, the only extra thing that I have added into our project is we have a Bootstrap and a Bootstrap menu right now. And into the main cell page, I have added all the required JavaScript and a Bootstrap file right here. Because we need a jQuery, Angular resource, and Bootstrap, part of the Bootstrap JavaScript, and then of course the main component is Angular_1 router and the Bootstrap CSS here. All those are the main files that we need. So I think at this point and then of course we have this navigation, Bootstrap navigation HTML, and then just the our main container. Into the container, we're going to write some code. Basically, we're going to write our very first component, Angular component. Okay. Other thing I want to make sure, when you're downloading from the Bower, please make sure the minified version is that you are using Angular, latest version of the Angular.js. At least version 1.5 and followed. Otherwise, the component module might not be available. That is, I have to say ahead of time, otherwise you guys be trying to follow my tutorial and you might not be able to, it might not be working. Okay, that is that. And now into our JavaScript, very first thing I'm going to do, let's go ahead and create some JavaScript file. We're going to add a new folder called app. Into this folder, I'm going to add a new JavaScript file. Let's call it main module.js. And let's define a self-executing function here, and self-executing anonymous function, and this is where we can define, let's call it main component app module, or whatever your name you like. It doesn't really have to be that. Angular, and write the module, we give it a name, and then just for now, let's say we don't have any dependency with any other module or components. So that is our module. Let's give it the same name as this variable here. Now we have our module, main module, and let's go ahead and stick that into the body as a ng app. I'm not going to go into detail about all this concept because most of you guys are already familiar with Angular 1.1. Okay, now we have and next thing, usually what I do, the convention that I follow, all the API is like a public library. I basically load into the head section of the HTML, and my custom JavaScript I load before the end tag of the body. So basically right here. So let's copy one of these, and then include that one here, and let's change our file is inside a subfolder called app, and we name our main module as main module.js. Okay, let's make sure this module is basically loaded. It's always a good idea to use the developer tools, and make sure all the library that we need here. If we look into JavaScript, we don't see any console error or anything, so it looks like it's loading okay. Okay. Next thing we're gonna write our very first component. Oops, that's not what I mean to do. I don't know why it opened that. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this one and add a new file. I'm going to name this one as first Angular component. So right now we are not really creating a module, we are using it, so we don't specify the dependency. And then into this, here's our component app module, and then here we're going to create our very first component. This is how we create a component. for the people who have not created component, it takes two parameters. The first parameter is the name of our component that we're creating, and the second is the basically component definition object. Basically, that's what it is. They call it a different name, but that's basically here. This object, JavaScript literal object, contains huge amount of attribute or properties. That's what we'll be using. And one of those attribute is very common attribute is, let's say, a template. If you guys have been, so in the nutshell, the component is basically very advanced form of directive. But if you have been programming a lot in AngularJS, a directive is one of the hard. For me, I don't know how you guys learn it, but like for me, directive was one of the hardest concept to understand because it has so many terminology and so many things to consider. For example, it has the idea of idea of the controller, or whether it is inherited scope or isolated scope. It has so many things inside the component. It was very difficult to learn. It was, well, you could learn, but like you have to read a lot. In my case, I had to read a lot of books and go through a lot of code examples and then watch the videos and stuff like that. But component I found a lot easier, and it's kind of like now with starting for version 1.5, it's really recommended approach. Okay, anyway, let's give some value to this template. Okay, let's say this is my first template, basically Angular component template component, and let's give it a name as a first template. Okay, this is our very first template. So let's see how we're going to use it in our markup, in our HTML. So the way we're going to go into our HTML page, which is index.html, and we have a little CSS container here, a div with the container CSS class container. Into this, we're going to stick this. Though it is very important to keep this in mind when we write, just like in a directive. So basically all the uppercase, we have to change it to a dash and lowercase. While we write it, we'll have a camel case format, but here it's very important. This is the format we'll have to follow. Okay, and then we're going to close that. This is our very first component. So at this point, let's see if everything is good. We should be able to see that whatever we have is specified into the template into our HTML page when we run this. Okay, let me go ahead and make sure I save all the files, and also I have included the second page. Oh, that's what happened. I didn't really include this one. That is why. I did not include this file. So instead of typing, I'm going to rename this and copy this path here and go into my index page and okay, save that one. Hopefully this should give us, okay, nothing fancy, but it's it's very first thing we did. We just created our very first component, Angular component, and this is the text. What happened was basically it displayed the text. As you can see, as a curious developer, you want to see how does it render by the browser. So let's see how does it look like. As you can see right here, this is what it did. Basically, this is the Angular, I would say Angular engine, in raw runtime, whatever it is. Basically, it created a template like this. Okay. Okay, that is the very first thing. So the next thing we're gonna do, this is not okay. This is the template, meaning like we can have some HTML, whatever. It's good, but it's not that useful yet, right? So if you guys remember from the directive, Angular directive, we have template also, but in the template you specify. Let's say sometime you have specify a lot of HTML as a string, which is in JavaScript is really tricky. You have a lot of issues and problem. Instead of having that markup into as a template, we can specify a file. Okay, let's see how to do that one. So I'm going to create one more JavaScript file here, and I'm going to name this one as first Angular component. I'm going to say template URL. You might have guessed this is the second attribute or property of the component, so called the template URL. So here, just like before, we're going to use the same module here and have a reference into that variable. And instead of this, we're going to change the name of our template as template with template URL. And instead of using the template attribute of this object, we're going to use the template URL object. So when we use the template URL attribute or property, then of course we're gonna specify the HTML location from where we're gonna basically download. Basically, well, the Angular basically at runtime, it basically fetches those using XML HTTP requests or AJAX, right? So just for now, so let's say we're gonna specify. Here's our JavaScript, and go to a public folder here, and I'm going to add a new folder here called templates. As you guess, it's a templates. I'm using the same JavaScript name. Just grab this one. I'm going to add one HTML file here inside the template, and I'm going to name this guy as HTML. Okay, and just for now, let's say div this content is reading from the HTML templates or whatever. It doesn't really matter, just for demo purpose right now. Okay, save this guy and go into this, and our template URL would be, we are inside this, so very first thing is we have to get out. We will be in an app folder, and then if we go one more layer up, we would be in the JavaScript folder. They are the same level. So from there we go into a templates folder. In templates folder, we find this HTML page. Oops, what did I do? No, I don't know. For some reason that got dragged into that, but that is not what I mean to do. Go and get rid of this. Okay, I was here. First Angular component template.html. That's the name of my HTML page. Okay, once this module is this component is defined inside this template URL file, now we have to let's come in here and include that JavaScript file also into our project. Okay, let's get rid of this guy and let's make sure, well, we can do a couple of things. Always as a developer, you want to see your code is working or not, right? You can do, if you go into a network and if you look into, basically not go into a sources, the resources. From here you can see your component. Okay, network, okay, since we are not Okay, looks like even we will have to use it before we can. Basically, I was trying to show you whether it was fetching that template URL or not, but we haven't really used our second module yet. Let's go ahead and just say this is first example. Second example of the components of in the second component, we name our component as a template with template URL. That's a really funky name. I don't like that name. I mean to say component with template URL. That name kind of makes sense, right? So I'm going to go in here and just like before, we're going to use our component now. As you have guessed by now, we have to make sure that we have that fixed template, and then here is a URL. Okay. And we have to terminate our component tag. And let's go ahead and run this one here. Okay, that is pretty good. So as you can see, even that is what I was trying to basically show you right here. So in here, this is this content right here was fetching using XSR. That's why so this fragment of HTML was using Angular was fetching using XSR, which is really, really cool. So like imagine like you have a huge amount of JavaScript, not JavaScript, HTML here. Now you can change, maybe you will have, let's say you can write the whole articles right here. You know what I mean? So the whole story goes here. Okay, so you guys got the idea. So basically now it is very modular. Let's say if you have to change HTML, you go into that template and find your HTML fragment, modify it there. That is really, really cool. Okay, so far we covered about some of the properties of the component, the component definition object. We talked about template. We talked about template URL. The other cool thing about the component, Angular component, is that you can specify, you have your controller within the component. Okay, let's look into that example. That's going to be the third part of our, that's going to be the next thing we're going to do, okay? Let's go ahead and create one more file here. And let's rename this guy. Angular component with controller. That is that, and also with the same name, I'm going to create a new a template file, HTML file, which we'll need also. So I'll rename this one. Oops. Okay, we have a HTML template and corresponding module here. Of course, we need to acquire the same module, and we're going to say component with controller. And of course, in this example also, we're going to use our markup. I will be using the same we'll be fetching our HTML from the template. So instead of this template, we'll be using this particular template right here. So the another property or attribute of this the component, Angular component, is called controller. The controller, basically behind the scene, this is the only thing it takes. The cool thing about this controller is this is injectable, meaning we can pass our HTTP, whatever dependency we have, we can specify. Not like that, but I'll show you the way to do it. You can specify your dependency here. But in this particular example is very simple. We don't have any dependency here, so we will have very simple function like this. Okay, you know, basically even better than instead of having something like this, having anonymous function right here, we can basically make a private function here. Component with controller. Let's go ahead and create a private function here somewhere and say a function so here what we can do, let's say we're gonna give us some basic property here. Let's say a title. Very fast Angular component tutorial. Example with controller. Angular component tutorial example with the controller. Okay. Let's see, we have now, we know we have a template URL, and let's say we would like to have this title to be available to our template. Let's see how to do this one. So we can go into our first Angular component template controller. Instead of this text coming in here, we would like to have that name to be available here. So as you know, we can use Angular binding syntax here. So we should be able to do. For some reason we should be able to use that title, right? Like this. Let's see. Just for now, I don't need this one. So just I want to see the title that I specified into my controller. It should be available here, right? Let's see. Of course, we are not ready to. I think we're almost ready to use this one. So let's go ahead. Of course, as you guessed, we have to include this file into our main page. Our index page. I started, this is going to be like later on, I'm going through all the different components that you guys would be, first to be familiar with it. And after that, once we have all the basic ideas, everything hammered out, we're going to, of course, I will create a full-fledged application. But even before creating that, I want you guys to know, especially people who are not really familiar with the component, to know every basic ideas and construct. That's why I'm going through these examples. Okay, let's go. So in here, let's go ahead and add another. I think this is first Angular component with controller. Let's go ahead and load this JavaScript file also. All right, so this I'm gonna let's say this is going to be a little smaller. Controller example. Let's go ahead and save everything, and then here, what is the name of our component with controller? This is our component, so we're gonna use our component here. component with controller, and basically we're going to close the ending tag of our controller, and if everything is good we should be able to see. Okay, of course it's not always everything is good. It's not. So controller example, it didn't display, as you might have guessed. I mean, of course, you know that kind of makes sense. Let's revisit our the controller. I mean the component with the controller here. You're using this, and this is the name of our component, and this is the folder where we'll find the HTML page and the controller. So in here we're just saying title. It has no idea what the title is, you know. So by default the component, Angular component, provide a property alias called CTRL. That is, I think, refers to a controller. So basically we are referring to a property of the controller object here. That's why if this is how we can refer to the title object. But still we have issue, right? Because it's not loading. It's not loading our JavaScript. Let's see what's going on. First, Angular component with controller. Oh, maybe the component with controller. Okay, let me make sure. Maybe perhaps I might have a typo or something. For some reason that it didn't work. Let's go ahead into index page, and okay, that is the name of my component. So component with controller. Okay, and then I have loaded the JavaScript file. Let's see, it should work. Okay. Angular component tutorial example with controller. Is that the name that I gave to? Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, okay, this is the name I gave to a title. So this is how we can refer to the title, private property of our controller. I mean the property of our controller here, right? So this is weird though. I mean, like, you know, you have to kind of like memorize the CTRL, $CTRL. That is a default property specified by the Angular. That is kind of like very not really intuitive name. So instead of doing something like that, what we can do, there is one more attribute of this object. There is something called controller as, and you can give a name whatever you like. It's basically a view model or whatever you want. It's, let's say we can say a PM for view model. And then this is also very tricky in JavaScript. You know, like if you have been writing a lot of JavaScript, especially prototype JavaScript, then a lot of people do something like, let's say PM equals to this. That way you don't have to refer to this anymore. So we can just refer to view model, that as a, you know, this property as a part of the view model of the controller. So this looks much better than having, if we do this and then we're going to say once we specify controller as PM. Now if we go into our HTML, we don't have to do this funky $CTRL. Instead of that, we can just say VM. That should work also. Okay, no changes. And then if we look it into our network, now instead of we have two of these external JavaScript files are loaded at runtime. Pretty good. This is going to be the second part of tutorial, guys. Going forward in the third part, we'll be using more complex example, and we'll be going through a bunch of example, and eventually we start writing our project. All right. Thank you so much for watching these videos, and then I'll be recording more videos as we go forward. Thank you.